And tonight, some of America's top newsmakers are here, along with our rowdy bipartisan studio audience, to tackle the hottest stories and the most talked about viral videos of this week. And here is a sneak peek.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
The sixth year.
Thank you very much.
As he prepares to take on the sixth year of his presidency, we examine how the president's policies have impacted all of us, and we track his rocky approval rating.
We're going to take this issue head on, and they're going to wish they weren't alive after I'm done with them.
The big-time producer of movies like this one threatens the NRA and says America should be gun-free.
Enough is enough.
And Sarah Palin takes on parents gone wild in America, from supermodels taking babies on ATV rides to youth football coaches berating their little players.
I don't care how much pain you're in, you don't quit.
What's going on? All of that, plus the Reverend Franklin Graham shares his little-known story of being targeted by the Obama IRS. And NFL legend Joe Theismann previews the Super Bowl. A special studio audience edition of Hannity starts right here, right now.
All right, as Barack Obama embarks on the sixth year of his presidency, hope and change seems to be looking a whole lot more like doom and gloom. Now, before we bring in our lively audience for tonight's, well, thoughts on things and where they stand for the president, let's take a look at some of the numbers that have changed dramatically for the worse for the country during his tenure. Now, for starters, when Barack Obama entered the White House back in January 2009, his approval rating, it stood at a very healthy 68%. But today, well, the very same Gallup poll reveals only 39% of Americans approve of the way that he's handling his job in office. So why the huge drop? Well, I can name just a few of the possibilities right off the top of my head, all dealing, of course, with the president's failing policies, and beginning with the fact that he has added more to this country's debt than pretty much all presidents before him combined. Now, back in 2009, the U.S. national debt was $10 trillion, but today it stands at a whopping $17.3 trillion and rising every second. Now, that's just plain scary. And for national security, well, for this country standing in the world, for our children and our grandchildren, it's not looking good there either. And moving on, thanks to the president and his brilliant agenda, the poverty rate in America now has skyrocketed since he took office. Now, when 13.2% of Americans were living in poverty in 2009, today that number is 15%, or, get this, 46.5 million people living in poverty today in the United States. Now, why? Maybe because the average American family is now making far less money than it did when he took office. Median household income was almost $60,000 back in 2009. Today, it's about $52,000 per year per family. And because incomes are dropping, well, the number of Americans living on food stamps, well, that increased from 32 million in 2009 to a whopping 47 million Americans today. Now, those are the facts, and that's where things stand as the president now begins the sixth year of his presidency. So we bring in our studio audience for reaction. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Jamu and Rick Unger sitting back to back. I like that. All right, let me put up on the screen, first of all, the biggest problem that the American people think when it comes to the problem in the country. How many think they know the answer what the biggest problem is? What is it, Doug?
It's government.
Government.
It's a failure of our system to produce results, leading the economy to suffer, people to be underemployed, and people to feel hopeless about what's going on in Washington.
This is your president, your party.
If he's failing and he's a Democrat or Republican, we have to be honest, Sean.
Okay, now let's put up the 7 most devastating economic statistics. Jamu and Rick, I want you guys to pay special close attention. 91.8 million Americans no longer in the workforce. Number of jobless working-age Americans has risen 9.6 million people since January 2009. 47.4 million Americans rely on food stamps. 10.98 million Americans receive disability checks. 1 in 3 Americans have felt or fell into poverty between 2009 and 2011. 42% of Americans say they are worse off financially than a year ago. The U.S. debt, he called $9 trillion irresponsible and unpatriotic. Now it's 17+ trillion. Rick Unger, can you admit this is failure?
If you're going to put it that way. Look, you know, there's so many statistics you put there, and I actually agree with Doug to some extent. If government can do something about it and it goes wrong, then you have to blame government. There is something else at work here.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
This is his presidency.
Yeah.
He's had 5 years.
Yeah.
If you say it's George W. Bush's fault, I am going to assault you on national TV.
Well, I might say it then, because that would be worth watching. But no, in fact, just the opposite. I think that so much of this is the result of business cycles. I don't blame George Bush. I don't blame Barack Obama. And you know what? When it turns around, I'm not going to give Barack Obama the credit either.
Amy,
It's
17 trillion
cycles.
in debt. Look at these numbers, 91 million Americans out of the labor force, the highest number in decades. That's not Obama's fault?
That's a bill of indictment. And I think an even bigger problem is that the president hasn't kept his eye on the ball when it comes to this economic crisis. What did he spend the first few months of his presidency doing? A foolish and failed gun control agenda. You feel like this presidency has just really been lurching from fiasco to fiasco with no clear vision, no clear agenda. And today we're addressing the NSA. Why are we talking about the economy?
200 million text messages a day. I don't like it. All right, Jamu. You love the president. You defend the president every time you're on this program. Are you going to tell me that this is a record of success?
It's a record of reality. In looking at who do I blame?
A reality of success or
Sean,
failure?
You asked who is to blame.
No, I asked you if
think
this
we
is
have
success. That's what I asked.
We have to look at the titans of industry. It is fantastic that the stock market has bounced back. It is fantastic that we had 4% GDP growth at the end of last quarter. But who has not benefited from this? The workers whose productivity is up. You have conservatives fighting the minimum wage that hasn't been raised, that needs to be raised.
Hang on.
You raise the minimum wage,
Hang on a second.
you get people off the food stamps.
Help me out.
You get people off
No, if they
of
have a
Medicaid.
job, they get off
But
of
no,
food stamps.
Conservatives
Michelle.
decided to
All right, go ahead. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Want to create a dependent class, which is exactly what Obama and the liberals have been doing, is creating this dependent permanent class. It's a war on poor. It's not a war on poverty. And they're creating it, and yet they say that the right is the one perpetuating it. No. Youth unemployment right now, 16.3%. That number wasn't up there, but that tells you right there, people my age and younger are hurting, and we are the ones subsidizing health care, Medicaid, Social Security, you name it. Big government.
Growing up.
Okay, you want to go there? Because
Yeah.
my debt is saddled right now because of the older generation, and you look at what's happening with
That didn't
Obamacare
answer my
currently.
question. Who subsidized you growing up?
That's
mom
a
and dad.
ridiculous
Your
statement,
parents
first
did.
of all. Yeah, but I want to be independent.
Why
I
do you
want
have a
to be
problem
working.
subsidizing their generation?
Yeah.
Else's mom and dad.
What I'm saying is
Go ahead.
young people want to be
It's all the same.
independent of the government.
No, it's not. It's not. Wait a minute.
Something called
Voluntary and not voluntary, and that is not voluntary. Look, the thing is here is America is no longer in the top 10 countries among the world when it comes to economic freedom. And if you look why, it has to do with the fact that this administration continues to place more regulations, more rules on businesses, and it's not getting better. I mean, if you look at the economy in December, only 75,000 jobs were added. That is not progress. I don't see anything good about that. And if you look at the amount of people who've been unemployed for 27 weeks or more, it is holding steady at 3.9 million.
It's worse than that. But hang on. It's worse than that because now, Michelle, we're debating whether or not people that get benefits for 99 weeks ought to have it extended.
Sean, I'm glad that you brought up the minimum wage because it's important, I think, to understand that what you're talking about in most of these statistics is subsidizing the ramifications of Obama's economic policy. And I think the minimum wage is another good example of that. You can raise the price of labor, but you can't actually raise its value with government policy. And that means that all you're going to do is raise the cost to businesses to hire people, particularly at the low-skilled level. That's going to result in more people unemployed.
All right, I'll tell you what, let me ask a quick question. How many worry that maybe America's better days, with all the debt, unfunded liabilities, how many think America's better days may be behind us?
Sean, and if it
That's
does,
right.
if it
How many
does
think-
turn around, my generation loses. You know, you talk about the younger generation. My generation is the one that, when we start the recovery, it's too late for people my
Well, you're
age.
still a teenager,
Because
so that's...
I'm a little bit older than you are. So by the time this starts turning around, my retirement, the people my age, my peers, are not going to. It's not going to make it up. We don't have time to make it up.
All right.
So we are. This
Hold on.
affects our life. The American people know this. That's why President Obama's ratings are in the tank. He has got approval rating that's gone down into the 30s, and these are Nixonian numbers. And we don't even have a Watergate type of.
No, we actually do. We have an IRS scandal, a Fast and Furious.
Nothing that has stuck because the mainstream media is defending him. So right now, this is just the American people hurting. They know who it is. They know whose fault
That's
it
the
is.
thing. I doubt anyone in this room is really hurting, but there are 50 million Americans on food stamps that are feeling it every single day, every single week, every single month. We're going to take a break. Are America's better days behind us? We're going to get to that. Also tonight, in case you don't know, there's two big major football games this weekend. Football legend Joe Theismann, he's going to stop by with his picks for Sunday's big NFC and AFC championship game. And then Governor Sarah Palin, she'll be here to respond to what some people are calling outrageous examples of American culture and American parents gone wild. But first, tonight.
We're also going to make sure that we gather up the facts and hold accountable and responsible anybody who was involved in this.
He vowed to get to the bottom of the IRS targeting scandal, but now the Obama Justice Department is working overtime to sweep that controversy under the rug. When we return, Reverend Franklin Graham, whose very own charity organization was unfairly harassed by Obama's IRS, he's going to respond to the FBI, saying there's been no criminal charges this week as we continue. And by the way, then we'll turn things over back to this very quiet, demure, shy, rowdy crowd. All my rowdy friends on Friday night right here.